Station to Station, your Blue Jays series review show. My battery mate, as always, Dustin. We are reviewing the three-game series versus the Baltimore Orioles that just finished. Dustin, this was a key series, and I think we have a lot of talking points.
I think so too. I think the series get more and more important as we slowly approach the end of the series, and I know there's still a lot of baseball left, but with so few American League East teams that we get to play in this new season, I think they're just more and more important.
Well, and as this series plays out, which we're going to talk about over the next few minutes, I think we're going to see some signs that the Jays are maybe right there. Other signs that the Jays are, just not quite good enough right now. But let's get into game number one. We had some roster moves before game number one. Brandon Belt, following that hamstring injury he sustained, was put on the 10-day injured list, and Ernie Clement was recalled from AAA. Danny Jansen, who had been rehabbing at AAA, was recalled and activated to the roster, and catcher Tyler Heineman was optioned to AAA. So a couple roster moves kind of set the tone for this series. Danny Jansen will have a lot of involvement, but it's good to see him back in the lineup, Dustin.
Tough loss on the Brandon Belt side, but as we've seen, I think the last 3 or 4 times that Jansen goes down for injury, which happens at least once or twice a season, usually when it comes back from that, he's hot. I don't know if it's he's just had some rest, and he's just the rigors of catching sort of catch up to him during the season, and he's gets to rest and come back hot. But whatever it is, it's at least helping us out with the loss of Belt.
Well, we're going to talk about how Danny Jansen did in a few minutes. Lineup for this first game, we have Jansen in at catcher for Kirk, who moves to the designated hitter slot. Aside of that, we really have our best team put forward with everyone playing the positions that you would expect. Pitching for the Jays in this game, Chris Bassett. And unfortunately, Dustin, Chris Bassett did not have his usual performance, and the Jays ended up losing this game 11-6.
Not at all. It's surprising to see how poorly he did. I know this O's team, I think, is at least the offense is legit. So, it's a tough match. But man, Bassett's been so good lately. It's hard for me to believe that this happened like this.
Well, his pitching line in this game, 3.0 innings pitched, 11 hits, 8 earned runs, 1 walk, and 5 strikeouts. The 11 runs that the Orioles scored, they were actually all in the first 6 innings. So that 11-6 scoreline makes it seem a little bit closer of a game than it was. It was essentially 11-2 going into, I believe, the 8th inning.
Yeah, I mean, the Jays did get 15 hits to the Baltimore 17. I think that it was actually, in some ways a little bit closer than it looked on the scoreboard. It's just, as I'm sure we'll discuss many times over the next 3 game recaps, hitting with runners in scoring position was, a miss here.
Well, I'm just going to touch on a couple more highlights of this game. So Dalton Varsho had 3 hits in it. Kevin Biggio with 2 hits, one of which was a home run. So a couple of performances that I think, despite the loss, are positives. 2 players that are slowly getting back in their groove and finding ways to contribute.
Yeah, I think Varsho has been turning it back on in the last, let's say, 2 weeks or so. He's kind of quietly been improving himself here, and so that's good to see. I think overall, a couple guys like Biggio and a couple guys are sort of keeping this team afloat.
Well, the Jays lick their wounds and come into game 2. And our lineup, the changes, we have Biggio at first base, Instead, Vladdy is our designated hitter, and Kirk comes in as our catcher. Our pitcher for this game, Jose Barrios. Dustin, comparatively towards Bassett, this was the complete opposite and was an exceptional pitching performance by Jose Barrios.
As we've been talking about him over the last 2 or 3 starts for him, he has settled into a nice groove. I think his nickname was called the Machine.
Yeah,
I'm
El
not
El
gonna,
Maquina.
yeah, I wasn't gonna attempt to butcher the Spanish, but yeah, that what he is. He's fairly consistent, and he takes a no-hit bid into the sixth, and he's slowly becoming the guy that we wanted when he was signed here not too long ago.
Well, the game remains scoreless until the sixth inning, where George Springer hits a solo home run to left field. The Jays add a couple more runs and end up going on to win this game 3-1. As you mentioned, Barrios did take a no hitter quite late into this game, and his pitching line 7.2 innings pitched, 3 hits, 0 earned runs, 1 walk, and 5 Ks. He's now 7-4 with a 3.28 ERA. Dustin, one of the things that I noted going through this pitching line, his strikeouts per inning seem to be down, but with that, also his walks seem to be down as well. So he seems to be, maybe not getting as many whiffs, but he just seems to be not putting as many guys on base and getting himself into as much trouble.
I think he's locating fairly well in the zone with some movement on some of his pitches that just keep the guys off of it just a little bit, and he gets a lot of ground balls and fly balls and just weak contact. One interesting note as well, I mentioned about the no-hit bid. I think this was the longest no-hit bid since Ross Stripling last year took a no-hit bid into the sixth as well, if I'm not mistaken. Um, so I was crossing my fingers and hoping for some history, but alas, we weren't able to see it.
Well, I felt it was kind of like a sleepy kind of no hit because I while watching the game, I didn't quite realize that a no hitter was going on because I think there were some base runners, someone player got hit by a pitch, some a walk or two,
Right.
um, but so it was kind of like a sleepy no hitter, and when the Orioles got their first hit, there's a big kind of roar in the stadium, and I was kind of wondering what was going on. And the broadcasters mentioned, "Oh, there goes the no hitter," and I'm like, "Oh, I knew he was pitching well, but I almost didn't realize he was pitching that well, if you know what I'm saying."
Right. Yeah, exactly. I think, even sometimes the broadcasters can be a little superstitious about it, and they don't mention it as much. They'll say stuff like no hits yet from the Orioles, but they won't mention it outright that a no hitter is being thrown.
Well, you don't want to anger the baseball gods, Dustin.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
I know I don't. So,
I've
all
been
right,
praying to them lately, so
one
we'll
more
see
kind
if
of
it works out.
one more highlight from this game. Whit Merrifield it was 3-hit Whit in this game. I believe that's what he was called after the game. So he had another productive game, and he actually, as a result of that, he was rewarded with a higher number in the batting order in game number 3, which he actually hit fifth in game number 3. So which I'm kind of liking seeing that the batting order is a bit more fluid and it's not just, Kevin Kiermaier's number 9 and this guy's he's moving guys around in an attempt to kind of get things going a bit.
Yeah, I think so too. I think it seems to be, and maybe I'm wrong, but it just seems for me to be the philosophy of, trying to get some guys ahead of Guerrero. I know Guerrero hasn't been hitting a lot of big, home runs or anything lately, but he does get a lot of singles. He gets, some hits. So I think moving him down in the order and some guys that can make contact, get on base ahead of him, they're just trying whatever they can to get this run scoring drought off their backs.
Well, the Jays go into the third game, so they're at this point the series is 1-1, and the third game was an early first pitch, so 1 o'clock, and you kind of felt going into this game that if the Jays could kind of wrestle a win.
Hmm.
Maybe the series obviously was tight, and game number one was at times a blowout, but it kind of would have been a bit of a moral victory as well.
Yeah, that's for sure. I think that yeah, they just needed a win against the Orioles. I think it had been four losses to them, not to mention all the other AL East teams, and just a Pyrrhic victory at least.
Well, the lineup changes for this game. Springer is the DH. Kevin Biggio goes into right field, and our catcher is Danny Jansen. Our pitcher who took the mound in this game, Yusa Kikuchi. Uh, we're going to have a lot to talk about in this game. I'm not going to spoil anything. The Jays did end up losing this 4-2. In terms of a highlight from the Jays, and actually I should have really corrected myself. The Danny Jansen lost this game 4-2 because it was 4 runs for the Baltimore Orioles, 2 runs for Danny Jansen, and zero for the rest of the Blue Jays. But
Uh,
Danny Jansen, I'll let you talk about him in a moment, but his numbers in this game: 3 for 4, 2 home runs, 1 double, and 2 RBIs.
as I mentioned earlier, he seems to just get hot when he comes back from injury, and just it's happening again. I don't know what it is. Like I said, maybe, being a catcher, you kind of, I'm sure, take a lot of bumps and bruises during a stretch of games, even though he's not, the everyday catcher or even the majority catcher. I'm sure it's tough. So perhaps, being on injury, you rest up, you get a little bit of fresher, and you're coming in with that fresh body, fresh legs, whatever it is, and he seems to take advantage of it.
Well, and one thing Danny Jansen definitely brings to the table is power. Alejandro Kirk, uh, that's not really his strength. He's a bit higher of an average guy, more of a contact guy. But Danny Jansen can really turn on one, and well, he really turned on two in this game. I did want to talk about just some other items. I felt that Kikuchi, although his pitching line didn't seem too bad, I thought he was quite shaky. And I'm gonna just a particular. I did watch this game live, but this was a particular scenario where he walks Anthony Santander, and this pitch that he walked him on was basically in the dirt. And I was wondering, like, why are you throwing a pitch in the dirt on a 3-2 count? It was very head scratching.
Mhm.
The next batter comes to the plate, and Anthony Santander actually advances to second base on a wild pitch. And so, we have this kind of this scenario where really I don't know if Anthony's like really they should have been out of the inning because this all of this happened with 2 outs in the bottom of the first, and um, it just the Jays were just not good enough in this game, and I think this is an example of that. I think the pitch selection was very strange at times at the beginning of the game, but Kikuchi was fortunate in that he was able to get a strikeout here, a fly out there. Um, I don't. I think whereas Bassett really got punished, I think Kikuchi somewhat got away with things at times today.
It's interesting that you say that. I wasn't able to watch it, completely live. I was checking in, at work and listening to what I could. Um, but, just looking at his line, he pitched into the fifth, 7 strikeouts, only 2 walks, earned runs. I mean, 6 hits. And as you say, I mean, maybe the eye test just, some wild pitches. There was one time I was watching it and he there's a pitch he just threw and it was way high and outside, and luckily Jansen was able to stand up and catch it. But I was just like, what kind of pitch was that? So
Yeah,
yeah,
they're
maybe it's just yeah, like you say, like he got a little bit lucky. He was able to squeak out a decent
well,
performance.
it seemed like a bit of a speed wobble at times, right? Like he,
Right, right.
he gets two outs in the inning, and then there's this scenario with Anthony Santander where he reaches base, he advances on that wild pitch, and what I didn't say earlier is that now that he's on second, Gunnar Henderson hits an RBI single and drives him in. Now it wasn't Gunnar. This wasn't really great contact, but it's still. I think there's some mistakes there that just allow an opening for another team, and this kind of really makes me wonder about is this the reason why the Jays are just not they just are not competing against AL East teams, is that these ALS teams are just that much better than all of the other divisions. Dustin, I had texted you that they have the third worst record against their own division, but outside of their division, they're the second best team in baseball. It's totally insane. Now, I don't think the Jays are that far away from the Orioles, but where I think they are far away from the Orioles is something that you mentioned on earlier, is a problem that was essentially screaming out to us in this series is their inefficiency with runners on base. And sorry, runners in scoring position, I should say.
Right. Yeah, exactly. That's been, I mean, that's their entire problem, I think. And I think they're better than the Orioles. I mean, I think this is a better team on the whole. The Orioles are a great offense, obviously. And we saw that all series. And, I think they have a fairly high, compared to the Blue Jays, anyways, a fairly high runs per game. Um, but yeah, the runners in scoring position is just, insanely bad. I think they're last, if not, bottom, five of the league in terms of that stat. But when you look at I was looking today at Baseball Savant and just looking at some of their expected numbers, which are, stats where they basically, you know, try and calculate what should the batting average, the slugging percentage, the on base percentage, etc., be based on how hard they hit the ball and all that. And they're above average, top of the league in all of those numbers. And somebody like Vladimir Guerrero has the expected slugging, and his expected batting average is much higher than his actual batting average and actual slugging. Like his expected slugging is 538, and his actual slugging is like 440. So he hits the ball hard. He hits it in the air. It's just like it's not going in. And when that happens with runners in scoring position, maybe they're pressing, maybe there's a bad approach. Who knows what the reason is? Maybe it's just bad luck. Like, I mean, honestly, it could be.
Well, that's probably a component, yes.
I'm just like I said, I'm trying to look through the numbers, and I'm not an expert in all this, but I'm trying to look through the numbers and figure out like why is this team not hitting with runners in scoring position? Everything says that this should be a good team. They hit the ball hard. They, you know, um, they have a fairly high batting average. I think they're top in the league, and like they're above average in batting average, on base, slugging even, but it
Well,
just doesn't happen at the right times. I don't know.
okay. So in this series, they were 6 for 29 with runners in scoring position.
That's
Okay.
unacceptable. Yeah.
Well, um, and I'm actually gonna highlight two particular innings in today's game. So that would be game number three. And so we have the top of the seventh. We have first and second with two outs. Okay, so we have Danny Jansen on second, Kevin Biggio on first, and George Springer basically flies out. That's fine. It's two outs. Obviously, you can't always expect something to happen. But it was a two-out rally, and I think the better teams are going to take advantage of situations like that. But more egregious was the top of the eighth, where they had first and second with one out, and that's not even the worst of it. The worst of it is that following that, Whit Merrifield is called out on strikes, and then right after that, Matt Chapman's called out on strikes too.
Oh my
Like,
God.
just looking, it was absolutely one of the most insane series of events I think I've seen in quite some time. And I get that you might be looking for a different pitch or whatever, but like two batters in a row, like, come on. And this is completely, at this point, this is completely unacceptable. And you were talking about the, I would say, somewhat dichotomy with this team. So we have, in terms of hits, the Blue Jays still lead the majors with 643 hits, and they are
Mhm.
second in team batting average with 265. They are only behind their next opponent, which is the Texas Rangers. Now, on the other side of things, and I am going to reference the site that I'm looking at here. It's teamrankings.com. And the Blue Jays are worst in the major leagues with an average of 3.86 runners in scoring position per game being stranded. So this is, this site has, in the last three games and whatever, and in the last three games there are much worse teams. But over the course of the season, the Blue Jays are the worst at doing this. They are also the worst for total runners left on base. So that, of course, accounts for runners at first base. And per game, that is 16.45 runners per game they're leaving on base. That is insane. All right, like, and
So here's
this is. Sorry, go
well,
ahead.
here's the question with all of that, right? W- Is that an approach issue, or is that just, because
Well,
if it was an approach issue, if it was a process issue, whatever the case may be, like they're just looking for the wrong pitch or whatever the case may be, or just hitting, I don't know, they're trying to hit a certain way, then you'd think you'd see that in the non-runners in scoring position numbers. Like there just wouldn't be this dichotomy. I don't,
well, and that's the thing. So we can talk about what they should do. Um, I think that basically, I don't know, something seems to happen. I think it's related to approach. And the other thing is that if you're talking about runners, just general runners on base, like, how is a guy scoring from first? He's scoring from first on doubles,
on a double. Yeah.
triples, obviously home runs. Um, but I think this is
They
a
need to
sign
hit
that
more home runs. They need to, that's
well,
that
they need to hit more. They need to hit. They need to slug more, right? They like
exactly.
this is the problem with Vladimir
Yeah,
Guerrero
you're
seems
right.
to be the problem with the whole team. I think they need a change in the coaching of the hitting on this team. I think they need to change because I think and to say that is that going to fix things? No, we don't. There's no guarantee on that. But what I think is these guys need something fresh, something different. It just needs to be, it's the air is stale in the room. Open the windows.
Yeah, look, I'm not one, me, we've talked about a lot of this stuff in the past. I'm not one to call for firings. Um, I wasn't calling for the manager firing last year. I wasn't calling for any of this. Even recently, I think a lot of people were talking about we should fire Schneider, but I'm kind of I'm kind of almost there on firing Martinez. I mean, because I just I can't explain it anything other than there's some sort of approach, philosophy, or something that's going on with runners in scoring position. It's the whole team. It's not a couple guys. It's everybody. When they get those opportunities, they're just, I don't know, they're striking out, whatever it is. But
You know what
maybe
they're
you're
also
right. Maybe just to get a fresh air, like you said.
You know what they're also doing, Dustin, is they're hitting into a lot of double plays. They are 25th in the majors in the amount the amount of grounded into double plays per game, which is 0.83. So they hit into a lot of double plays. They don't they don't slug very well. And it seems like when runners are in scoring position, they really are not very productive. I I noted with Rob, we kind of had a midday conference call before the game started, and so Guillermo Martinez he's kind of similar to Schneider in that he's like a long term Jays guy,
Hmm.
and
He's been around
which is
for a while.
fine. Yeah, he's been around for a while, and that's fine. You know that's great. But what I would like to see is, yeah, I think they need to, maybe I think the quick thing that always happens is you fire the hitting coach and then you promote one of the assistant guys. I was thinking about like what kind of candidate would you look for? Like who would you be able to bring in? And I think the profile of a candidate is so you get someone who went from hitting coach to manager but kind of failed and got fired and who's now a AAA manager because if he's a AAA manager he wants to get back to the big leagues. Someone who like was a good hitting coach who has a basically matches with what you want to do. So with whatever Schneider wants to do, that hitting coach's philosophy has to go with that. And I just think some fresh ideas are what's needed.
You're not wrong. I think that's probably a pretty good philosophy to go with in terms of hiring a new coach. And yeah, maybe bringing some fresh eyes, some fresh ideas to this team will help. You know, anything, at this point to turn this around because there's not a whole lot of time left to turn it around. I think, it's a long season, but we're digging a pretty deep hole here, and the people we have to leapfrog, the teams we have to leapfrog rather to get into a wild card spot are good teams. I mean, we're seeing it here. It's the Baltimores, the New Yorks. So, yeah, something's got to give here.
Well, I think at this point, like if they make the playoffs, this is kind of like they're getting in the back door, and then they're causing some damage. I don't really see this team kind of going on a run and um, maybe threatening for a division title, and that's just simply because of the team that is on the top of the division right now, and I generally don't think Baltimore is going to slow down. I think they're going to keep on picking up wins and probably enough to get in the wild card. It's probably going to be is it Toronto or is it Houston? Because the
Yeah.
Yankees will probably be there too, right? They're another AL East team, and
Mm.
um, see what happens. So.
Yeah, yeah, and just to cap this off with maybe a little positivity, I think, the likelihood of winning the division is, in the order of 5%, right? There's a world where Tampa falls off, has some injuries, some disaster happens, and the Blue Jays kind of knock it out of the park. Uh, New York never gets healthy, and the Orioles kind of scuffle. Sure, that could happen. But, I think when you look at the schedule and you look at the teams that the Blue Jays have played, I can't remember, even in the last month, a team that they've played that was below 500.
Yeah, that's been crap. I agree.
So it's just been such a tough start of the season. And then I was looking at the schedule and the series ahead. There's a couple weak teams that we have here before the All-Star break, and then there's you know, quite a easier sort of schedule down the sort of August stretch in September. And last year's August and September, that's when this team got hot. That's when Bo really turned it on, and that's when, you know, if you look at some of um, the numbers from last year, um, to start the season, it was pretty bad as well in terms of um, the runners in scoring position and these kinds of things, and they turned it around. So I think it's possible. There's some pretty weak competition coming down the pipe. The Blue Jays are known to turn it on in the summer months, and you know, I don't think it's very unlikely to make the playoffs here. I think we're going to get in there in a wild card spot.
Well, I think we're going to be in the conversation for sure. The positive thing I will take from this series, as frustrated as I was watching today, I think they're right there with the Orioles. So, the Orioles are in second place in the division, but aside of that first game, which, got out of hand very quickly, they they were kind of going blow for blow with the Orioles. And, if they were maybe a little bit tidier, maybe the outcome would have been different today.
Definitely would have been. Yeah, I think it's a razor's edge these games, and yeah, they could have gone quite differently.
All right, Dustin, I think that's all the time we have. Thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you, Elmo.